meet, I think, Mr. Shukri and Secretary General Guterres. Back to the negotiations. Work, as you know, culminates usually after the first week. All of the technical work should have been completed, but as always, some of it spills over to the second week. So we tried to balance allowing those tracks that needed more time to go ahead, and we designated pairs of ministers that did a wonderful job, of course, within the limitations, and they all progressed work. Mr. Shukri meets them very, very regularly to get updates and give them guidance while keeping the distance and allowing them to still be in charge. We had a stocktake where he acknowledged all of the work, but had to take all products as they stood into the hands of the presidency in order to see if we can come in and bridge some of the gaps that still exist. That has happened in a plenary session that was open, of course, so many of you may have followed it. Essentially, this is very normal practice. It happens every COP, and this is where we are right now. Minister Shukri announced that now all products, after having met collectively with all of the pairs earlier today, we had the plenary where he thanked them repeatedly for all the hard work they'd done and the progress they'd helped achieve, and then he announced that we'd be taking it under the consideration of the presidency, so that now he has the totality of the package, including those streams. You're familiar with them, I'm sure, the loss and damage issue, the mitigation work program, Article 6, finance, the GGA, Global Goal on Adaptation. Those were packages that were handled by ministers, and now they're in the presidency's hands. All of that in parallel to the covered decisions. So that allows one entity, in this case the presidency of the COP27, to have the overall view of everything, because whether we like it or not, parties and groups tend to link things and make sure that they're covered in all areas, especially because substantively many of them do overlap, especially the covered decision has elements that might be addressed elsewhere. So we need to ensure consistency in the texts. So that's where we are right now. Mr. Shukri indicated this much, that he will now start, and it is actually taking place right now, meeting groups to listen to them, each group at a time, to make sure we understand exactly where the concerns of various groups are. So it's not on a topic, it's across the board most of the time. And this is what is happening right now, and will continue to go on until we bring this to what we hope to be the good conclusion we're looking forward to. That is regarding the main negotiation streams that have been taking place all along. On the other hand, the cover decisions, which you may have know about and what they do, they provide an overview. They are used by presidencies to fill in the areas that don't necessarily have proper agenda items under consideration, but they also do touch on some of the areas under consideration without encroaching on the party-driven, country-owned parts, but giving more general remarks on it, and that's the practice which we followed. What did we do and why did we do it? We took it in a gradual, progressive sort of manner. The first one was just to have an open meeting where people expressed what they would like to see in general, or specific if they so wished at that time, in those covered decisions. The next phase was to provide them with elements in the form of bullets under general headings. Let's say mitigation, 10 bullets, 9 bullets, whatever. Everyone would say, okay, I like these, but I want some other ones, or these are too many, whatever transpired. And then the next phase was to provide them with text, but a lot of text, because we had heard very, very, very much from parties. They were very generous with their contributions. So the document, after we tried to reduce it and limit it, was 51 pages. And we made it clear to everyone, and despite that, a lot of people in the media got it really wrong. They assumed that this was a text produced by the presidency. That was abundantly clear to everyone in the rooms. This was not a presidency-driven document. Rather, it was, I don't want to use the word compilation because it wasn't a complete compilation, but selectively chosen because there were redundancies and repetitions, but it was intended to show everyone what everyone else was saying. We succeeded only in bringing it down to 20-some pages, and everyone in the room, most people in the room, and for those who asked, we responded to them with what I'm explaining right now. This was not a presidency position. It had incredibly diverse and divergent views, so it couldn't be the product of any single author. It would just seem out of the ordinary to have that many divergent issues. So it spoke for itself, and we clarified it at least 5, 7 times throughout the day, yet a lot of the coverage referred to it as the presidency document. It never was that, and most people were aware of that. Next was the product that we held another meeting when we got feedback over the 20-page document, and then we spent overnight between yesterday and today. Thanks very much to the Secretariat. They were in the rooms next to us to take the products that we gave to them, which was again more streamlined, more concise document that brought the 20-some pages down maybe 8 or 9 pages, and that is our product. So the first COP27 presidency document was the one that was released, I think, first iteration was 330, and then there was a correction in some paragraphs that got lost in the sending from us to the Secretariat. So I think the most recent one was 9 a.m. document. That, again, I'll stress, is the presidency document. We are very well aware that, because they made us know how they felt, that not everyone was completely happy with that product. And that is to be expected because, again, as I've repeatedly said, we're dealing with 190 something parties who don't see the same issues from the same perspective. So at the end of the day, this is normal. I don't think we have much to worry about. I hope I'm not wrong. We'll discover exactly how people feel in exactly 17 minutes when I open today's HODS meeting to receive feedback from people on the document. We fully expect people to ask things that they were dear to them and were in the 20-page document to come back, and others will object to language that is there, and yet others will ask to drop things that are there. That is perfectly normal, and that was part of the game plan moving forward, that we start broad and try to narrow things down until people feel comfortable. And I stress it in the beginning and at the conclusion of every HODS that I invite heads of delegation to attend. No one is supposed to be completely comfortable. If anyone is 100% happy and content, that means there's groups on the other side that are going to be quite disturbed. So people need to understand that it is never going to be accommodating your national perspective or this group's perspective 100%. So this is where we are right now. Just to recap where we are at this moment. On the cover decisions, we will have this round. I would be surprised if this was sufficient and we only had very few issues outstanding. I would expect that we might have to produce another iteration of it in light of what we hear today. People let you know what is an extreme red line for them, and then we take that back and try to fine-tune things to make everyone comfortable. The objective is to be able, at conclusion plenary, to adopt it without incident. It rarely happens without incident, but that's of course the objective. Regarding the negotiating streams, as I indicated, everything now is with the presidency, and Minister Shukri, as I indicated, is holding meetings as we speak with various groups. Time doesn't allow to have a round with everyone on each one of the issues, so it's probably, I'm speculating now, it's probably going to be to listen to them on the main issues across the board, but I can't confirm that. It depends on what happens in the rooms, of course. The objective of that is to allay concerns, accommodate requests to the extent possible in such a large collective consensus-based process. So that's where we are right now, and I do have another 10 minutes, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We don't have interpretation today, so please only questions in English. I start here in the first row.
Thank you for the briefing, it's very helpful. John Ainger, Bloomberg News. Countries have called for a number of strengthened language measures in the cover text, yet they've not appeared in either the compilation or the cover text overnight. Things like peaking emissions by 2025, phasing down fossil fuels, a roadmap for phasing down coal. Why has that not been included, and will you include it now, seeing as it could be the key to unlock talks on loss and damage? Thank you.
You made the linkage, I didn't, that last sentence. I'll just be very specific to the first part of your question. Ambition can be interpreted by people in different manners. The one that you mentioned right now is reflected, has been reflected to us, and we'll hear it again, I trust, in the meeting room in a few minutes. Others think it is too forward moving on some issues, and that it is very poor and lacking when it comes to the support side. Yet others say that the adaptation section doesn't meet their expectations. So it depends who you're talking to, and we're talking to everyone, and they do not hesitate to come to us. And Mr. Shukri says it every time. My door specifically is open 24 hours, and he's practically in the building for 20 hours a day. So when people come to us with their thoughts, they reflect a certain perspective. So I would be very reluctant to attribute any perspective to the entirety, or else we wouldn't have a problem. We just accommodate and do what they want. So I've heard that, I've heard other things, so I just want to set it clear to everyone. These are 197 countries with very, very different economic levels, aspirations, capacities to move forward, and expectations when it comes to support in particular. So we heard the young lady from Ghana. I hope you all heard her. Very, very articulate, but also very to the point, and hitting really a lot of important notes that I'm glad that the world got to hear. So that's where it is, different views around here.
The lady here in the first row.
Thank you, Victoria Seabrook from Sky News. The 20-page list of bullet points, if that wasn't produced by the presidency, then who did produce it? And there's been a lot of praise about the skill and experience of Egypt's negotiators, and therefore surprised that the first draft only appeared today. Why did it only come on Friday? Thank you.
I thought I answered in a too long version the first part of your question, but I'll say it again. As I indicated, and on our text, it had attributions. So it said this came from this group, this came from this party. So you're asking who produced it. We collated it, we brought it together, and it was 50-some pages, not 20, but the one that we tried to reduce because there were repetitions. So it was a collection of the most prominent things. We don't count heads, but we try to identify issues that are important to people. So that's where the product comes. The short answer to your question, it is a product that was produced over 2 rounds of listening to people, first without a piece of paper, second with the elements, and that is that product. So that's the answer. I wouldn't mention anything about skills. That's for others to determine based on whatever success we may have in the past or here. But we think we're following a very, very clear game plan, as I indicated, at least in this regard, which is where we have a little bit more influence on the product. And as I described, we started very broad, and gradually we're getting to the narrower part. Hopefully time will fit and work, that we will have the product that people can all be comfortable with along the lines I just described. No one will be completely satisfied. So that's where we hope to utilize, I don't call them skills, I say the tools in our toolbox, because it's not just us. We play a role, but we have multiple people from various delegations. We have good contacts with everyone, and I mean every group, and we've known them for years, and we utilize those contacts to have. We had a meeting yesterday at 3 a.m. in the morning with some delegations, so they're willing to come to us. We go to them over a cup of coffee, and we try to understand where they're coming from and come up with balanced outcomes. So it is a very complex, broad process, and we're utilizing everything at our disposal to make it move forward. Yeah.
The lady here in the first row.
Sophie Mukwena from the South African Broadcasting Corporation. I just want to find out, the issue of loss and damages was always going to be a thorny one. Fortunately, it's on the agenda, but financing, are you making headways in all these sticky points in terms of financing?
I assume you mean the funding for loss and damage, or the finance agenda by and large? Yeah. I got you, yeah. It was, of course, coming out of Glasgow, a reason for a lot of frustration for many countries who are on the front lines of the climate emergency. So we were aware of that. Anyone following would have been aware. So we allocated a lot of the resources and time and effort between Glasgow. It didn't start here, but of course intensified with the appointment a few months before COP of Jennifer Morgan and Maisa Rojas from Chile and Germany to shepherd the process, and they did that to the best of their ability. It is not an easy issue. It is quite complicated, and I'm sure many of you are aware of the complexities surrounding that issue. They did their best, and then now we step in. We've taken the most recent text, which has 3 options at least on paper, to see what we can do with it, and that's again part of the conversation Minister Shukri will be having, perhaps started and will continue to have. We have high hopes. We were tasked to put every effort, but also to get it on the agenda. We need to remember where we were on November 5th. Many people were highly skeptical that this could even be on the agenda. And it was not easy. It was very close, and we had meetings to finalize the agenda on the morning of the 6th, before the opening, literally a few minutes. So it wasn't a done deal at all. So we're happy we could have brought that forward, but we always knew that it wasn't just about having a space and a discussion. It had to be meaningful, but then it gets complicated. Some people wanted to be over the mandate's duration that came in the agenda. Others want to get it done fast. The modalities and the system and the word facility can mean many different things. There's a direct, simple notion of this big pot where people put money and then you have something, and then there are a variety of other options, and this is all in the hands of parties. They come from different perspectives. So we're hoping for the best, and we'll continue to work, hopefully, for that outcome. But as we always say, it's in the hands of the parties. They have to realize the importance and move forward.
The lady here on the side.
Jayashree from Hindustan Times. I wanted to know, EU has put forward a proposal on the loss and damage issue, and I've heard from developing countries some of them are opposed to this proposal. Do you see flexibility among these parties to come at a landing zone, and how would the presidency resolve these differences over the next 24 hours?
I think my answer will be quite similar to the previous question, in the sense that we're of course aware of it. I've heard it read out to me. I haven't seen it on a piece of paper to actually, look at the small fine print there. And it's just an option now. And there was a meeting earlier when the 2 ministers came to report to Minister Shukri. They indicated to us who supported what, so we're at least aware of that, and that helps us. The 2 ministers are in the background. As we start, they offered, and Minister Shukri, of course, welcomed, to continuously fall back on their counsel, but at the end of the day, he will take it forward, bearing in mind, of course, what was announced by the EU. But again, just like every one of the other existing options, there were supporters, and there were people who were not comfortable with it. So I don't have much to add there. It is all on the table, and even more variations or combinations of the options might emerge as we move. The main idea is to ensure meaningful funding to people who need it with regard to loss and damage. That is the objective that everyone shares. How to get there gets a little bit more complicated, but we'll do our best.
Thank you. We have to close here. One more? Okay, one more question. Yeah, the lady here on the right side.
Thank you. I was worried you'd never look this way. Group of 77 yesterday indicated at one of the panels that there are voices within the group calling for them to simply walk out. Is that something that you're worried about at this point, that actually might happen, that we may not get a final decision? And then question that every single one of my colleagues is asking, do you know from the top of your head when was the last time COP finished on Friday? Thank you.
Could you please identify yourself?
Ivana Kutasva from CNN, sorry.
Okay. I'd have to refer you, of course, to the G77 chair, Minister Nabil Munir. He knows the exact details of their position. The last I heard is that the G77 is holding on to their coherent collective position, but that's just a short sentence he shared with me, and he can better answer that. Coincidentally, you're asking a question that I have an answer to, which is regarding, I have a chart, someone showed it to me, I wish I could bring it and share it next time. I think in the history of COPs it happened twice. And then we had the listing of Saturdays and I think 3 Sundays. So, and I've been to some of those Sundays as well. So it's not a testament for or against a COP presidency. It really is a function of how things proceed. As I said before, some things seem sailing smoothly and then they stall, and the reverse, you get a breakthrough. So it is a very broad and complex process with many sovereign states that doesn't have a voting culture or mechanism on substantive issues. So it's subject to so many crosswinds that might affect how things transpire. What matters really is to have meaningful outcomes. I take Monday if I was guaranteed, a meaningful outcome. But it is what it is. You deal with it, and then sometimes you get a late break and you finish early on a Friday. So we'll see how it goes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador, and we are trying to get you the chart that Ambassador Abulmakt was mentioning. So thank you for today, and please watch out for the next press conference.